beautiful song. Thank you. And now I'm going to call up Reverend Eileen, and she has a talk in the presence of fear. Stay.
Hi, I didn't hug you today. I didn't hug Cecily today. I had to get my hug in. Good morning or almost afternoon. I'm glad to be here today. I really am. Makes a difference when you show up and you see faces of people that you absolutely love and adore, right? Don't hide back there, Shelly. Right? It makes a difference. It makes a difference. I don't know, I woke up this morning and there was blue sky, and I thought, yes, it's going to be a great day. And then I looked up for my meditation work and my Sunday morning ritual to go get myself ready, and suddenly it was fog again. And the fog kept rolling and coming, and I thought, maybe it'll be sunny in Fort Bragg, because I don't know about you, but I love the fog, but I want it for like a couple of hours only, and then it could go away. Right? It could come in all night long. I love to wake up with my, because I always keep my curtains open in my room, because I get that natural sunlight. It makes a big difference in my life. Am I the only one? No. Yeah, I really love being in a light-filled space. So today I want to talk about something every single one of us knows well: fear. Not theoretical fear, not fear we read about in a book or talk about in a class. I mean the fear that wakes us up at 3 o'clock in the morning. The fear that arrives when the phone rings at an unexpected time. The fear that whispers, what if this doesn't work out? What if I lose something I love? What if everything changes? What if I say what I really think? Or what if I don't know what comes next? That's all really scary thoughts. And perhaps the most important question of all, listen closely. What if fear isn't the enemy, but a guidepost towards a deeper understanding? What if fear isn't the enemy, but a guidepost that pushes us towards a deeper understanding? Because most of us have been taught that fear is something to overcome, conquer your fear, face your fear, right? Face your fear, defeat your fear, be fearless. But I'm not sure if being fearless is actually a spiritual goal. I wonder if the deeper spiritual practice is learning how to be in the presence of fear without allowing fear to determine who we become. In Pema Chodron's The Places That Scare You, she writes about meditation and the discomfort that shows up when we simply sit still. Our bodies start to wiggle. Has this ever happened to you? You're going to go into a meditation and suddenly your body needs to cough and cough out of nowhere, cough. Or you start to feel tense in a certain part of your body and you're knowing, I got to just move it. And, and you think, can I move in meditation? Yes, you can. And you can cough. It's okay, right? Get the wiggles out, is what I used to tell my niece when we were doing the kindergarten together. Get the wiggles out. But our minds then start to wander, right? We remember something embarrassing that we did 12 years ago, right? We suddenly need to make a grocery list, or we wonder what's for lunch. And sometimes something deeper comes up. Sometimes when we sit down to meditate, fear or grief or anger, loneliness or uncertainty shows up. And Pema offers us this wonderfully simple instruction: stay. Restlessness? Stay. Fear or discomfort? stay. I can't stand another minute of this. Stay. Not because suffering is spiritually virtuous, not because we're supposed to torture ourselves, but because there's something we cannot learn about ourselves while we're constantly running away from ourselves. And I think that applies beyond meditation. Sometimes life itself says, stay present, stay curious, stay compassionate, stay long enough to discover what this moment right now may be trying to teach you. Now, Ernest Holmes, our founder, he gives us a provocative definition of fear in The Science of Mind, where it's written, but what is fear? Nothing more nor less than the negative use of faith misplaced. See, Holmes isn't saying that fear makes us weak. He's saying that it demonstrates something powerful about us. We have faith. The question is, where did we put it? Where did we put it? See, faith says, I have faith in something. Let me try that again. Fear says, I have faith that something terrible is about to happen. I have faith that I won't be able to handle it. I have faith that there won't be enough. I have faith that I'm alone. And I have faith that this circumstance is bigger than the divine presence within me. That's fear. Yet it's still faith, right? It's simply faith pointed in a direction that diminishes rather than expands us. And suddenly fear becomes useful information. See, fear becomes a little spiritual dashboard light. It comes on and it says, you may want to look here. Not, you're doomed. It's just something that needs your attention. If we look at it that way, that changes our relationship with fear. Instead of immediately asking, how do I make this go away? We ask, what is this trying to tell me? Where have I placed my faith? What am I believing right now? And is that belief actually true? See, there's a difference between listening to fear and obeying fear. Fear gets a voice, yes, but fear doesn't automatically get a vote. Fear definitely doesn't get the car keys. Elizabeth Gilbert, in her book Big Magic, she writes, the less I fight my fear, the less it fights back. Well, that sounds deeply aligned with the spiritual practice, doesn't it? Because sometimes our struggle isn't simply that we're afraid. We're afraid of being afraid. We're afraid of being afraid. We think, I'm spiritual. I shouldn't feel this, right? I've been doing this work for years. Why am I still afraid? I meditate and I pray. I know the principles of science and mind, and yet fear shows up. Being in the presence of fear is not spiritual failure. It's a part of being human. The practice is learning how to say, hello, fear. I see you. What are you trying to protect? What do you need me to notice? And then here's the important part. Thank you. I'll take it from here. Let fear give you the message and then tell it, you've got it. It could go away. And I want to tell you a story about a friend of mine. A friend who was facing a major decision. Now, this friend had been presented with an opportunity. On paper, it looked really exciting. A new possibility, a new direction, something that could absolutely open doors. But every time they thought seriously about saying yes, fear showed up. And that they interpreted it as a warning. Maybe I'm not supposed to do this. Maybe fear means this isn't right. Maybe spirit is telling me no. Anybody else have this dialogue in their minds? I know I have. Sometimes we spiritual people give anxiety, we give anxiety a promotion and we call it intuition. What is it that Christopher Campbell said last week? What's the difference between anxiety and, I forget, but he said it's just a couple breaths.
Oh.
Yeah. So my friend decided not to immediately say yes or no. Instead, they sat with the fear. And then they asked, what exactly am I afraid of? Not the vague answer, not everything, right? Specifically. What specifically am I afraid of? And eventually the answers started to come. I'm afraid I'll fail. I'm afraid people will judge me. I'm afraid I'll discover I'm not as capable as I think I am. And then another fear showed up that surprised my friend. And that one was, or another answer came up. I'm afraid that if I succeed, my life might actually change. Ah, now we've gotten somewhere. The fear wasn't necessarily saying don't go. The fear was saying this matters. And my friend realized something really important. Fear and intuition don't feel the same. Intuition was quiet. Fear was really noisy. The intuition said, pay attention, and the fear had a flashing sign saying, abort mission, right? So my friend took one small step, not 21, and then another. The fear didn't disappear, but something changed. Fear moved from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. It was still saying things, it was still running its mouth, but it wasn't choosing the destination anymore. And isn't that what courage actually looks like? Not I'm no longer afraid, but I'm afraid and I'm still willing to move towards what's mine to do. Now, fear can deepen our compassion as well. Something happens when we become less frightened by our own fears. We become more compassionate towards the fear of others. When we can be less frightened by our own fear, we then can become more compassionate by the fear that others are carrying, because everyone is carrying something we can't see. Someone who seems angry might actually be afraid. Someone who's controlling might be afraid. Someone who withdraws might be afraid. Someone who talks incessantly might be afraid. And that person who doesn't say anything, they might be afraid too, right? Oh, and the person who absolutely needs to be right all the time. What do you think they are? Afraid. Afraid, right? So suddenly compassion asks us to become curious. What's underneath this? That doesn't mean that we excuse harmful behavior. Compassion and boundaries can absolutely coexist. But we begin to understand that human beings often behave in difficult ways when they're frightened. And maybe we do too. There's a beautiful saying in the Tao Te Ching, I can never say this. Tao Te Ching. Whatever is fluid, soft, and yielding will overcome what is rigid and hard. Whatever is fluid, soft, and yielding will become whatever is rigid and hard. See, sometimes we mistake hardness for strength, but spiritually, softness can require extraordinary courage. It takes strength to listen. It takes strength to remain curious. It takes strength to say, I don't understand your experience, but I'm willing to hear you. Or I was wrong. Or I'm scared. And it takes tremendous strength to sit next to someone who's afraid without immediately trying to fix them. Right? Just being present. Sometimes love just says, I'm here, I'm listening, and you're allowed to feel what you're feeling. That is sacred presence. I had that experience the other day with a body worker who just held space. It was powerful. She didn't say anything or do anything. She was just the catalyst for me to allow this fear and grief to show up and let it out. It was beautiful. That's her strength. That's her sacred presence. Now imagine communities where that becomes normal, right? Where fear doesn't immediately become accusation. You know, like about a fence on Main Street. where uncertainty doesn't become division. Where discomfort doesn't immediately require someone to be blamed. Where we can say something's happening here, let's get curious together. That's spiritual community. Fear also appears whenever we approach the unknown. And we're living in a time of enormous uncertainty. Our communities change, institutions change, relationships change, technology changes. Our bodies change, our plans change. The world changes. And we desperately want to know what's going to happen. I would love to tell you, but I can't. But here's what I believe. We don't have to know what's going to happen in order to know who we want to be when it happens. We don't need to know what's going to happen. We need to know who we want to be when it happens. We don't have to know what's going to happen. We need to know who we're going to be when it happens. That's where spiritual practice becomes practical. Or as one of my teachers would say, how do you want to be remembered in this moment? Ernest Holmes, again, he writes, there is but one mind, one law, which all people use consciously or unconsciously, constructively or destructively. See, creative power is present. The question is, how do we use it? Fear can contract our imagination. It says there's only two possibilities, or there isn't enough, or protect yourself, right? Don't trust anyone, or don't change. But curiosity asks, what else might be possible? And that's where fear can become that doorway that Christopher was talking about, that threshold, right? Joseph Campbell, I love Joseph Campbell. He famously said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek. See, I don't think that means that we should recklessly charge into every dangerous situation. It means that sometimes the places we resist are precisely where our growth is waiting. Maybe the cave is a conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's setting a boundary. Maybe it's admitting you need help. Maybe it's trying something you've always wanted to try or releasing something that no longer fits in your life. Maybe it's forgiving or saying no or saying yes. Maybe it's allowing yourself to imagine a future that looks different than the one that you had planned. And fear may be standing right at the threshold, not necessarily saying don't enter, but maybe simply saying this is unfamiliar territory. So perhaps we can start thinking about fear differently. Imagine, all right, imagine you're driving down a road and you see a sign that says curve ahead. You don't stop the car and say, well, that's it. The journey's over. Right? You don't turn around. You don't get angry at the sign. You don't rip the sign up off out of the ground. Instead, you appreciate the information. You slow down, you pay attention, you adjust, and you continue. Fear could be a guidepost. Fear says, pay attention. Something matters here. Something feels vulnerable here. Something's changing, or something might need a healing. Something might be asking you to grow. So the spiritual question becomes, what is fear pointing towards? In The Contagion of Fear by Ernest Holmes, he writes, there's nothing for God to be afraid of. Now think about that. There's nothing for the infinite to fear. There's nothing threatening divine wholeness. Nothing is kicking out infinite love, and nothing's capable of separating spirit from itself. And that presence is the very presence that is expressing through you. Holmes asks us why, if we can tune into the fear around us, why shouldn't we also learn to tune into the mind of God, the consciousness that is free from fear and doubt? I think that's really pretty awesome, right? If we could tune into the fear, why can't we also tune into the mind of God? Because there's plenty of fear broadcasting right now, right? 24 hours a day. You can tune into whatever you want. Sometimes we do. I'm guilty of that. I don't generally watch the news. I don't want to know. I don't want the cloud to come over me. But if something tells me something terrible, if someone tells me something terrible is happening, I tune in. I want to know more. Why? Why? Why do I want to know what destruction may have happened in Hawaii? Instead, I want to sit and pray for the safety of the people and the animals and the planet in the way of that hurricane. I want to pray for my sister churches in Hawaii and my minister buddy in Hawaii. I don't need to know about the devastation. I don't even honestly know if it even hit the ground, because I really don't want to put the attention on that. I want to put my attention on the prayer, knowing that divine source is in, through, and around all of it, even the weather. We tune in before breakfast. We check our phones. Fear. We turn on the news. Fear. Social media. Fear. Conversations sometimes. Fear. Right? And then we wonder why our nervous system feels overwhelmed. Maybe our spiritual practice is remembering there's another frequency available. Love. Wholeness. Possibility. Peace. Wisdom. The divine presence within. We aren't pretending circumstances don't exist here. We aren't practicing denial. We're deciding which consciousness gets to lead us. Do I want to be in fear for what's going on with my friends in Hawaii? Or do I want to stand in a place of love, knowing that they're okay, despite the outward appearance? So this week, when fear shows up, don't try to get rid of it. Don't try to avoid it. Try something different. Pause, breathe, and just ask yourself, what am I afraid of? And then ask, what is this fear trying to protect? What does it want me to notice? And then finally, this is the most important part. What would love have me do next? Not for the next 10 years, next. The next moment. Maybe love says, have the conversation. Maybe it says, wait. Or ask for help. Maybe love says, set a boundary. Maybe it says, try. Maybe it says, go take a nap. Maybe it says, stay. Maybe it says you need to eat something, have some water. Go put your bare feet on the ground, on Mother Earth. Stand out under the stars and the moon and just soak it in. Maybe that's what fear is telling me. For me, often it's slow down. Slow down. Pema Chodron gives us that beautifully simple instruction: stay. Fear shows up, stay. Uncertainty, stay. See, your mind creates 17 imaginary catastrophes before breakfast. Stay. Stay with yourself, stay with the presence, stay curious and stay compassionate. And then stay until you hear something bigger than fear. Because underneath the noise, there's another voice. That is the voice of spirit. And spirit doesn't shout. Spirit doesn't panic. It doesn't say, hurry, everything's falling apart. You have to get that voice away to allow that still small voice within that whispers, I'm here. You're held. Listen. There's more here than what you can currently see. So see, being in the presence of fear is not spiritual failure. It's a part of the path. Our goal isn't to eradicate fear. Our goal is to remain spiritually awake in its presence. Fear can sharpen our awareness, and it can deepen compassion. It can reveal where we misplaced our faith, and it can show us what matters. And sometimes fear can stand beside a threshold and quietly point towards the life waiting on the other side. So perhaps the next time that fear appears, instead of saying, go away, we might say, okay, you're here. What do you want me to notice? Where have I placed my faith? And what is mine to do? And then we remember, fear doesn't need to disappear before we move. We don't need to be fearless to be courageous. We simply need to be willing to take the next faithful step. So together, I'm going to have us say this. I'm going to read it to you first, and then we're going to read it, or I'm going to read it to you first, and then we're going to say it together. So get your hearing ears on. I meet fear with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Can you say that? I meet fear with curiosity, compassion, and courage. One more time. I meet fear with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Good. When fear says, are you sure? We breathe. We listen. We remember who we are. And we stay. So this week, spend some time journaling or thinking about your relationship with fear. When does it show up the most? When is it the strongest? And what is it asking of you? And I want you to think about a time when fear actually guided you towards growth or change. Choose one current fear and just sit with it. Without trying to resolve it, simply practice being in its presence. In its presence, stay with it. Notice where it's been holding you back. Don't demand it disappear. Instead, choose one courageous action you can take with that fear in the passenger seat. Have the conversation. Try something new. Ask the question. Set a boundary. Tell the truth. Take the step, because fear doesn't have to leave before you begin. Fear does not have to leave before you begin. You don't have to be fearless. You only have to be willing. Let's pray, shall we? Knowing that there is one source, one power, one presence. I know that it is love and peace and power and joy. It is abundance showing up in all of its forms. And it is so very good. And I know that I am, and each person in this room, each person hearing my voice, is a part of that greater thing, that divine presence, that love, that power, that beauty. And I know that we are all connected in that as the divine presence experiences itself as each and every one of us. It invites us to go deeper, to ask the question, what is mine to do? To remain curious, to be willing to learn, and to be willing to step forward. That is what it does for us. It allows us to be willing to take on that fear and turn it into something really powerful in our lives. I know for each person in this room that there is a healing already taking place in the mind of God. There is a healing, there is joy expressing itself, there is power, there is beauty, there is compassion, there is understanding. And it's already happening in the mind of the divine. It is our choice to open ourselves up to it, to slow down and to listen to that still small voice within. Because that's where we know the truth. When we close our ears and open our heart, that's where we can know our absolute abundance. We can know our absolute joy. We can know that fear and not let it take the wheel. We can be compassionate with ourselves and those around us. Setting boundaries where we need to so that we can continue to open that heart center, to allow it to expand throughout our bodies and beyond. As we allow that heart center to touch those people around us, transforming not only ourselves, but the energy field of those around us, that is around us. Choosing love over all else. I am so grateful for this knowingness. I am so grateful for the connection that I have, that you have with the divine. I'm grateful for these teachings in all of its forms. And I release this prayer into the mind of God, knowing that it is already being acted on. Spirit is saying, yes, yes, yes. And so I could just let this prayer be, knowing that it's already done. And if you would like to anchor this prayer with me, you may join me in saying, and so it is. Blessed be.